focus.
Yeah, before we kick this thing off, let me go grab the questions here. Josh, where did you put that? It was in the actual event?
Okay. Yeah, in the actual event.
Let me pull some of those. There we go. Put that under our athlete concerns. One more second, we'll get rolling here, guys.
Yeah, man. All right, I got my morning coffee. What's your guys' drink in the morning? Did everyone hear? Because Chris is no longer on the coffee train, from what I understand.
No longer, aka never been on.
Really? Never?
No, man.
When I stayed with you and you guys were drinking like aminos in the morning, I was like, yo, this is some next level stuff right here. So what does everyone have in the morning? Because Chris is not a morning partaker. I would love to know. Spark, okay. I can't hate on Spark. I could say a lot of other stuff, but man, Spark's always done me good. And creatine, coffee with scoop of protein. Chris Munt in the house, keeping it real.
Is Spark caffeinated?
I don't know. It is, yeah, okay.
It's either vitamin B is a big energy source, and I think obviously caffeine is another go-to.
Yep. 2 French press. Nice. I want to make a supplement that's like 42 million percentage or B12. That's just like an outrageous amount. 750% seems good. And I'll be like the guy, remember in, what was that movie? Something About Mary, where it's like 7-minute abs. This is the idea. And he's like, well, what if someone comes along with 6-minute abs? He's like, I don't get it. 6-minute abs doesn't work. You can't do that. It's not. It doesn't make any sense. It's 7-minute abs to undercut 8-minute abs. No, exactly. Everyone knows that, Jason, right? You can't do a good workout in 6 minutes. It's 7 minutes. 7-minute abs. Step into my office, you're fired. I love it. I love it.
I think I'm caught up here. So let's do this. Cool. All right. I think we're good. Tim, you good on your end?
Awesome.
All right. So let's kick this off officially. We have Tim Thackrey from the Juice Compound, Juice Athlete Compound. Let me get the full enunciation there.
By using my middle name.
Yeah, I know, right? It's so pro. But today we're talking programming, and Tim and I were mapping out the flow of how we want this to go down today. And I think we've got a phenomenal layout here. So we're going to try and approach this from a couple different levels. So for those of you guys just joining, we want to address all of the concerns relating to athletes first, because at the end of the day, those are the people that we're trying to serve. And then we're going to try and flip it and take a look at it from a coach's perspective, and then also the business perspective of your gym. And then lastly, we'll get into some of the things that are relating to hiring a programmer or teaming up with a programmer and what that really looks like relationship-wise. So as we get into this, if you guys have questions, put them in the chat. I'll try and fuel those into the mix here. But we're going to kick this off officially with the first question. So Tim, this is kind of hot seat style. So
bring it to me. I love it. I'm excited to have everyone. And again, chime in, guys. Feel free to leave comments. Here to talk with Chris. Like I mentioned in the video, we've been probably talking about this stuff for almost a decade, you and me now. As long as I've known you, we've been trying to crack this code.
I feel like we're close. If not having, you never arrive. You always feel like you're like super close to figuring out the master plan. So
Yeah.
let's do this. Let's talk a little bit about programming background, your experience, what you got really interested in about programming, just to set the stage a little bit of your experience and interests.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So yeah, I opened my first CrossFit gym in 2008 in LA, and started off as a small gym, just like most people here. Ended up becoming a really big gym kind of fast. By 2012, I think we were at 330 members in that, and this was like supposed to be a part-time hobby like most people. So along the way, we had to realize, okay, how do we get better at this? And we were kind of one of the first gyms, and Chris, you can probably maybe add some insight on this because I know we were working together close then too, where we had a competition team like in regionals, but we were kind of really focused on the beginners and newbies at a time that maybe that wasn't quite as popular to do. So we had to go out and start to figure this stuff out. So that was how I ended up with Bob Tucano was my weightlifting coach for about 5 years, just kind of to learn this better. I didn't have a need to compete in weightlifting, but the agreement was like, well, if you lift for me, I'll teach you how to program for that, and it's kind of started to go down. That's 2009, 2010, trying to figure some of the stuff out of how do we, keep new people coming in and progressing them in a way that we know we can deliver, that if someone signs up for a 6-month, 12-month membership, I can actually show them, no, I have a plan to help you and not, I hope I can help you.
I think that's a really big talking point. So if you guys don't know this, who Bob Tucano is, catch up, but he literally wrote the book for USA Weightlifting.
Yeah.
And I'm always envious of Tim that you got a chance to start with him, train under him, and then eventually, learn, some of his methods on a daily basis. So I think that was a big, probably role model and inspiration too for getting into programming, because that's Bob is as science driven as it gets.
I mean, when he talks about the smell in the gym, he'll be like, oh, it smells like urea in here. And I'm like, what? He's like, oh, the smell of when protein synthesizes. I'm like, no one can smell that, Bob. Like, you can. But so he was a 40-year high school biology teacher and 5-time world team head coach for the U.S. in weightlifting. If you're not familiar, writes a chapter for the CSCS and NSCA book. So really grateful. And he's the one that kind of got me looking at this a little differently. Obviously, weightlifting programming, we can't use one-to-one for fitness programming, but there's good concepts and principles to understand. And that's what led me down to work with, say, like James Fitzgerald, Michael Fitzgerald, like I know you worked with Michael for a long time. And all these people kind of stemmed from that, going, okay, well, where are the other pieces that we want to try and uncover here?
Yeah, and speaking of James and his program, you're only a handful of people that have actually completed the OPEX training, right?
Yeah, finished level 1, finishing up the level 2 right now, and great course, highly recommend it if you haven't gone through those. Just whether you want to approach your programming like that or not for the gym, I want to talk some about the differences between an individualized approach, and obviously I have a bunch of individual people that I work with, and then gyms, and it's different. It's definitely different to do both of those things. Like, I mean, there's certain things. If you're going to run a gym class, you want to do lactic endurance intervals. Could you imagine giving someone 2 minutes on, 12 minutes off in a 60-minute class? Like they do they're like, all right, like it just, some things like that, we have to look at it from the gym owner's perspective, knowing who our avatars are for our different goal-based groups. And we'll get into that here in a bit too. And then how do we help get them where they really need to be and what their real pain points are for joining your gym and delivering on that.
So I love this. So one of the things, just to kind of recap here, lots of interests starting out as a personal athlete to improve yourself. And then I think I saw you transition a lot more to teaching others and diving into the science behind it. And then where does juice fit into all this? Like, what made you want to, go all in on that level?
Yeah, it was really just the amount of people I felt like I could help in this seat versus when we had the gym and we had a bunch of people there. It was the way to help more people was for me, I was going to have to open up more gyms. I'm going to have 6 to do more. And I started kind of helping some friends. I think I helped, if you remember, Darren from CrossFit Dumbo. He used to help Robert from CrossFit Garland. It just kind of was friends that hey, can you help with my programming? Sure. And it was really the same with my individual athletes. There was no plan to do it. It was a friend that was on the national team who blew out his Achilles and needed to get back on track. Yeah, sure, I can help you with a program, but there was no master plan of like, I see the course, and if I do this, I'll make an extra this here. And so, long story short, that athlete ended up making the Olympic team in 2016. And he just was a good friend that I was on the national team with for years. With Dumbo and Garland, and more people see it, and they talk to your friends and they want help. And I realized, well, now I can help potentially thousands of people with this and do something that I really enjoy, versus over leveraging myself in a position like, I don't know how to run 5 gyms. You know how to do that. I don't know how to do that. So it's like, I'll let you do what you do best, and maybe I'll stay in this seat and I'll do the thing I can hopefully do best, and then everyone wins, versus trying to be something I'm not.
Totally. I think I believe that you can really only do a few things really, really well before you get so stretched out that you're doing nothing well.
Seriously.
All right. So guys, we're going to switch gears here. Thank you for sharing all that, Tim. I think for some of you guys on the call, you've worked with Tim for some time. Some of you guys probably even use the juice for athlete programming or your gym programming. So for those of you new to the juice, I just wanted to recap and get you guys a little more familiar with him. All right. Let's dive into the athlete needs, Tim. Yeah. So what we were talking a little bit before on was trying to understand what are the needs of the athletes, because at the end of the day, that's what the programming needs to be molded around and serve best. So what does that really look like? What are the needs of the athlete, and how do you go about trying to create a system for that when we're programming for so many people?
Yeah, that's an awesome question, Chris. And if you guys want to type this up in the comments, I will read everyone's mind here. Tell me who your gym mainly serves. And I'll tell you, this is almost every call I have with most people. Hey, we're not a competitive gym. We have some competitors, but we're not a competitive gym. We have a lot of people that want to feel better, enjoy their time with their kids, look better naked, and be playing longevity, still feel like an athlete, or learn to do these things for the first time. That's almost every call I get on is that. And my initial reaction is, oh, you mean Matt Frazier doesn't work out with your 5:30 class? Like, yeah, at that level, they're doing their own thing. So for most of our gyms, yeah, look at that. 35 plus, mom and dads, grandparents, 90% of your population from Jason. Exactly, right? So we know who we serve, and part of that comes from the consulting side for so long of talking to hundreds and hundreds of gym owners. And Chris, how many gym owners have you talked to? And it's not just business. The business serves the athlete, so you know exactly who they're working with. We know that, right?
Yeah, and that's the majority of the population. Like, Jason was saying, 90%. But let's kind of flip it over a little bit and take a look at the 10%. How many of you out there have very competitive athletes that still need your help? Many of those people didn't start that way. You had to develop them, right? Yeah, and exactly. There's people inside these communities that we have that, are hopeful of doing that. So turn them away. Like, so where are the needs different?
Exactly.
So I describe that 90%. What does the advanced athlete look like? How do you recognize that type of person?
Yeah, exactly. So this person, for the advanced side, we'll kind of bring it back around through the stages of development. We can start here with an advanced athlete. We can start on either end. There's someone that's probably been in your gym, hopefully for a while. They, if you said, hey, you're going to snatch today, they don't grab the bar with a clean grip and put it in the front rack, right? You don't have to, go over the burden or warm up with them every time. You might do it for technique, but you're not, okay, if we don't go through deadlift positioning, this is going to be a train wreck of a class. So they have made a lot of the beginning and intermediate adaptations, meaning that they now have earned the ability and the right to be on, say, a more advanced training protocol. And that means that their central nervous system is more highly developed. so they can get more out of training stimuluses, right? That would be maybe lower repetition because they can hit that harder. There, they can push their energy system needs to a deeper level, so they can, I like to use the word, they have earned the ability or earned the right to do more complexity in their conditioning because they can now do rowing, kettlebell swing, burpee. They've mastered that, or they've gotten so good at that, they've made those contractions sustainable, and the only way for them to improve now is increasing, load, stimulus, etc., for that advanced person. Right, does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. And the thing that comes to mind really is, a lot of coaches are almost nervous if they recognize that person, because if you just realize what Tim just said, increasing the intensity levels and the loads, I hear in the back of my mind, more time, more time, more time.
Yes, for sure.
And we don't have that. We typically have 60 minutes. And what do we do? What do we do in that case of we recognize the need and we see that this person has the potential, but are we limiting them by just saying, hey, you got to stay in class?
Right. Yeah. And so the two options that happen here, we move them out of class and then they follow some blog that's not connected to your gym at all. Right. And they do this. And so now they kind of slowly work themselves out of your community. And I'm sure you guys have seen it. You've had athletes. You go, yeah, it's okay. You want to be supported as a coach. But now, either your programming is so because you're trying to make it one size fits all and just make scalings, which we can talk about in a second, for that. And so now the advanced people feel like they're not taken care of. The new people feel like it's too hard. So you're constantly having this moving bullseye to help everyone, right? So now the advanced people work themselves out. The new people who came in, or the intermediates that look up to the advanced people, now think, how do I progress? Oh, I shouldn't be doing your stuff. I need to work myself out of the gym to get better. And the goal is to have programming that makes everyone stronger. So one is by having different training stimuluses for different groups. The advanced people can get their needs met in the group still getting your coaching because they're advanced, but like they're not Matt Frazier. They still need help on their snatch. I still need help on my snatch. You still, right? Like we're not like, oh, I'm advanced. No one talk to me. No one look at me. No photos, please. Right? We still need coaching. We all do. We need accountability. We need the group. Part of what we've done for the advanced people is add in a pre-competition training section that actually flows with the sport-based training tier for the programming. It takes about 20 to 30 maybe extra minutes, but we know, let's say part one is front squat based for that part, and let's say bent over rows, right? It's A1 front squat, A2 bent over row. Part B is a conditioning piece. It's aerobic muscle endurance conditioning piece. That pre-class will probably be, if they're doing bent over rows, it might be muscle up technique. It might be hang clean. It might be snatch balance, something that would fit that profile so the whole class stays CP, gymnastic, aerobic muscle endurance based. Versus, oh, I'm doing this thing here and I ran 14 miles and I did this, and now they're doing a well thought out program, but it doesn't fit with your class, and now they don't want to do either. And then who do they blame when they don't make progress? Type it up in the comments. Who do they blame when they don't make progress? They don't blame themselves. That comes on you as the owner, even though it's not your. Even though we know, like, we tried to help them in. So for them, it's trying to keep the extra pieces, if they do want more, synced up, and if they don't, and they're just going to do the class, that the stimulus is what they need, versus just the idea that, oh, we're all going to snatch. You do triples, you do singles, maybe.
So I'm going to grill you on this because I got to look out for the affiliates out here. And
this is not the hot seat or what? Yeah,
this is. So one of the things that comes to mind I hear often with working affiliates is, that sounds great, Tim, but this pre-work that you're talking about, I don't have any room for that. Right? Like physically, if someone comes in and trains at, say, a 6:30 p.m., but there's a 4:30 and a 5:30 class, and we're, maxed out space-wise, or I don't have enough equipment, what do you say to that type of environment? Those are the types of things that I think when we get maybe to the gym side, we can talk more about the logistics. But can anyone relate to that? Maybe you recognize the need and you recognize that, you've got options as far as programming, but then limitations revolve around equipment or space and actually logistics.
Yeah, this is awesome. I love the insight you have on that. There's two kind of things I would bring up about that. The first, if space is a limiter, the chances of them already doing their separate training, right? Meaning they're doing I don't want to do the class, I'm doing my own thing, is probably very limited because there's no space. So that hopefully blunts that first issue of them wanting more for some reason. We're talking about an advanced person, not someone who's your main kind of right down the middle CrossFitter, can do all the benchmarks are close. They're not your challenger or fitness person who's coming in there for body composition, et cetera, and to learn the basic movements, improve motor unit control, muscle endurance, basic aerobic conditioning, et cetera. That's probably not the setup there. The second one, I would say, when space is an issue, and we have someone who wants to be a competitor, their focus is going to have to transition to, right, if that's the issue, and let's say we can't solve it there's no way they're going to do lifting before class, just physically impossible. If you go outside, the neighbors will complain, the city will shut you down. Let's say that's the setup, right? They're going to have to work on what? Aerobic progressions, right? Which the sport of fitness is an aerobic sport. I will battle anyone on this any day of the week if you want to try and say that the people with a bigger aerobic backbone don't do better relative to the same strength profiles, but with a lower aerobic profile. It does, right? That's how we recharge between intra-set during the workouts, how we recharge intra-events on multi-day competitions such as a regional or a local throwdown or the Granite Games, right? We do that. So I would say, hey, if that is the card you're dealt and they need more, I would steer them towards, different running intervals, rowing intervals, air bike intervals, for sure, if they needed that. And again, this is kind of talking about that 10%. The main part here is really that 90% for affiliates, but keeping that 10% in your gym and not having them go off. I hate when that happens, when I see them work themselves out because they do it for a while, they do it, and they don't have the accountability, and then they just drift off, and you see them back to being off.
Well, here's the flip side too, and then we'll get it more into the coaching perspective. But if we're really looking after the athlete in their best interests, right?
Yep.
Like, you have to recognize the limitations of your experience and your coaching team, as well as space, like we talked about. And I remember having this conversation with Danny Camargo out of Orlando, and he's Matty Meyer's coach. And we recently had him up, and he was telling me the story of how he actually, came to have Matty Myers as
Matty Rogers, yeah.
Sorry, what'd you say?
All good. Yeah, Matty Rogers.
And which was interesting because he was actually the assistant coach in the deal, because she was at first a taekwondo or karate, and she was looking for accessory work. And it just so happened that she started morphing her interest into CrossFit and into weightlifting. And the conversation was interesting because he had to appreciate the handoff. So when that athlete recognized that, hey, I could go far in this sport, the other coach had to let go. And that's really hard to do. And what I'm saying to you guys is it may be that you're limited based on your facility, based on the bandwidth that you have to service that 90% that truly pay the bills, or that, your focus is on. And that's okay. Yeah. So, in like going back to Tim, what you were saying before, where it could be a complete distraction for the majority of your gym to focus so much attention on these particular athletes.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but there has to be a system in place, and that's why we're having these conversations when we get into coach's perspective. So, question is, should you program for individual athletes? I'm hearing this more and more pop up. What is your insight into it as a gym owner?
Yeah, that part really from the owner's perspective, I think you want to go in the seat where if you're the gym owner, you're the head of the business, you have to see yourself like that. Yeah, you can do it. Like physically, I know people are capable of doing it, but what's the ROI on your time for what it takes? Because it takes a lot of time. And if you put that same time into your business, what's the advantage, right? And I'm going to say putting your time into other parts of the business, I think always makes the most sense from an ROI perspective, unless that somehow is your business. Like, yeah, for CJ Martin, that is his business. If he doesn't do that, like his Ben Bergeron, that is their business. Making sure Cole Sager makes in the game, that's their business, right? Most people, that's, again, but like Swanson calls them, these are unicorns. Like, you're going to model after a unicorn and go, I also want to wake up tomorrow and be great. That's good. We're leaving a lot on the table now. And I think we would be spent a lot better time working with coaches. In my perspective, coaching is the product, right? The athletes are the ones we serve, and our product is getting the coaches as good as we can. Not writing the programming, but helping them deliver the program to each athlete's need, and they'll identify, well, if this person is an RX CrossFitter, meaning, like, one of my avatars is, I call them performance. They have been through the basic stuff. They can do the 9 fundamental movements more or less well. They're trying to get the benchmarks RX around that range, right? There they could, power clean, they could power snatch, that area. Everyone kind of has some people they think of. For me, this is kind of the meat of the group, because we have our people coming in from challenge or newbies or trial, intro, on-ramp, whatever. They last, let's say, anywhere from 6 weeks to 6 months, probably in that kind of initial development cycle. They have an accumulation of all the skills. Now they can play the game. Now they can do their fitness training, right? Now they're CrossFitting. That lasts, somewhere between 6 months to 18 to 24 months. And then they either have the skills where they could do a harder training like sport, or, they may go focus on a different area. Now they've kind of gone around the block. So I think the biggest ROI is going and, working with your coaches on, okay, this person is a challenger, and the workout is, let's say, a 3-rep front squat for the first part. Let's just say, for example, well, why might a 3-rep front squat not be the best for this person coming in here looking for body composition and basic movement mastery and motor unit control? Well, why wouldn't that be, right? Because we know a 3-rep front squat, the time under tension won't be enough to make a hormonal and physical change, as well as a change from muscle growth or hypertrophy change to their body, to help them see the progress of your program, right? Because they're still getting their feet wet. So we've got to go, hey, we need to get them a change and help them, right? They're coming in for body comp. Let's help them see body comp. Okay, so that set now needs to last 40 to 70 seconds. But if your coaches can't identify that, it's all crossed, right? Does anyone ever have this issue? I see that all the time, or hear it all the time. So yeah, go ahead. I ranted there, but go ahead.
No, it's good. I was going to circle back around where we've talked avatars, right? So we've got these beginning people that are, maybe brand new, yes, just learning, really can't tap into high intensity stimuluses yet.
Right.
And then you've got people that are a little further along, that mid-range group, and then you have some more of an advanced group. So let's just kind of look at it in that perspective. And you went into addressing each person's needs from a loading standpoint, a stimulus standpoint, and it just kind of goes up in progression.
Yep.
Now, I want to look at it from a coach's perspective now, and this is a big question where, Tim, I've got the avatars. I understand how that works and their needs.
Yep.
But then from a class structure or lesson plan standpoint, how do I even begin to give them what they need and still keep things smooth, right?
Yeah.
Because this one class fits all model,
exactly,
it gets pretty challenging when you start recognizing the divide of these avatars.
Yeah, for sure. And this is one thing that comes up on almost every intake call I do with a gym owner. They see the need, like they're not unaware of the need of the broad spectrum of their members, but the time it takes to really find a good solution for that is difficult. So I think for me, where I start in my process is starting with kind of obviously the avatars, and my avatars are fitness/function. That is someone in my mind, they're a challenger, they're new to your gym, they want body comp, weight loss, movement mastery, etc. Or really, I've also been thinking about it as functional bodybuilding, because the loading is different. But if you give someone 10 to 12 reps of a light dumbbell front squat because they're new at, let's say, 3-1-X1 tempo, and that lasts 3, 4, 5, 6. Now it's a 60-second set, right? That's good for them. If you gave an advanced person a double kettlebell front rack front squat with that same parameter, but they have 270s, will that get them jacked? Yeah, it will be super jacked. Like, that's tough, right? So that actually works for even an advanced person. The loading is different. The performance are, again, our RX CrossFitters. They're still in the intermediate range, though. They still have a lot of progress to be made. So their loading generally, obviously we have accumulation phases, intensification phases. Most of their loading is going to want to be in the 20 to 40 second range, right? Where they still are getting a cross section of strength, but some hypertrophy also. Right.
All right. I want to ask you this. So, what are your 3 tiers? I'm getting this impression that there's 3 groups.
Yeah. Fitness, function, performance, and then sport would be the main ones. In sport are your advanced trainees. Doesn't mean they compete, but it means they can make the neurological and physical adaptations from heavy singles. Where if you gave a beginner first day, it's heavy single snatch, like, or hang clean, like, oh, just do it lighter. Cool, just do a really crappy hang clean. That'll get you ripped. When they wanted to have abs, they want abs. They don't care about a hang, right? So they need to be doing something like a deadlift, 10 reps, 2020 tempo, sets across, something like that, right? 2 kettlebell RDLs, something like that. That would be a precursor. They get good at that. Now they can naturally flow into performance, right?
Right. Talking about the flow.
So now we look at it from a class perspective.
Right. So
on the floor.
Do you have a preference as a programmer and what you see in the gym side? If you understand the programming, it sounds like there's different prescriptions for each tier. Yeah. Is this capable of being served in a single class? Should it be separated into?
I think it can be capable of being served in a single class. It's not, from the programming side, this is the part that probably takes the most time. The progressions, if you know the progressions, if you know the math, is not that hard, but knowing that how do we get the right stimulus, and not that every group needs the same stimulus, right, relative to their goals and flows together in the class. And so what this looks like is we want to do it really based on the movement profiles. So we have our main 6, and if you talk to the physical therapists like Dr. Han, it might be 7 if you add rotational power in. Right. Single leg, double leg squat, upper body push, vertical and horizontal, upper body pull, vertical, horizontal, bend and core. Right. We have our 6. So we're trying to look at those from the movement profile first. So that way we're not getting overuse injuries, etc. So let's take the analogy of the first part of the class. A1, A2 is front squat and bent over row. Right. Something like that. A vertical, double leg squat and a horizontal pull. Okay, so front squat for fitness, they need high time under tension. They are new, right? But we still want to do the same warm up essentially for everyone. So it's not you snatch over there, you go on a run, Chris, you're doing double unders and the class is chaos. There's no mutual common experience. It would be like, say, dumbbell or kettlebell front squat or a light front squat with maybe 4 sets of 8 to 10 reps at a 3-1-X1 tempo, putting them 50 to 70 seconds of time under tension. Performance might be 3 to 5 reps, 3 to 4 reps, depending where they're at, of front squats. Maybe they're still also working a pause there. And let's say sport is 1 1/4 front squats for a heavy triple, a heavy double. So the warm up there would be the same for everything, right? My sport people, I expect from a coaching side that they understand most of the things I'm throwing at them, and I'm not having to do a 5-minute coaching intro like I would for someone out of the challenge doing front squat, where you have to really break this down and help them get it. You're like, okay, we're doing this, and they know what they're doing more or less. They need your coaching in the moment, but they don't need to know the front squat was invented in 1942 by, right? Like, that's a beginner kind of approach there. That's fine. So, and then A2 would be the same thing. High rep bent over row for beginners, maybe a prone row for intermediates, maybe a pendlay row for sport. So they still fit together. The movement profiles are the same. Loading parameters, stimulus, rest can be changed. But from a coaching perspective, that warm-up, tell me how the warm-up is different if we're having squatting and horizontal pulling. pretty much similar, right? I mean, a few changes, but I think it's pretty similar. And so that's how we can serve different groups. And you and I can partner up, and you're doing fitness, and I'm counting 1 1,000, 2 1,000, 3 1,000, pause, up, 1 1,000, right? I can do that for you, and you can count to 3 for me if I'm in sport. If we wanted, right? We probably wouldn't partner up, but we could. And so the class has cohesion. The same thing for, say, if there's a conditioning piece next for just a simple class example everyone can follow. There, we want to make sure that the movements help them elicit that stimulus relative to their goals. So fitness is mostly aerobic muscle endurance and aerobic power. Those are the 2 areas they kind of need, right? They're not going to be able to elicit the power response to do lactic training.
So just to add to that, when I start looking at the format of how you're trying to serve these athletes, we talked about the avatars. We know that these avatars are coming all into one class. This is a great format where you can keep people satisfied, where you don't disrupt their regular training schedule. Right. You give them a lot of options on your schedule, whether it's morning, midday, evening, no matter what, they could come to any class. So it creates a lot of opportunity there. The flip side of that is actually taking and isolating, say, this avatar into their own class.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
So is there I don't think there's one better than the other. I think there's pros and cons to either, but I just wanted to put out there the different formats that, you're aware of and seeing. If you could, guys, in the chat, I'd love to hear from you guys, see what you guys are currently doing. Maybe you're interested in switching methods. Tim, is there any other format that you've noticed out there that people are running outside the 2 that we just mentioned?
I mean, those would be the main 2. The other one would be a higher specialty format where fitness training is like a class, and you have, say, strongman, you have where it's maybe more like that type of approach. But that's really minimal because it takes a lot more expertise of coaching staff. I will say the integrated model of fitness, performance, sport into one is kind of like running rolling challenge. It's just less intensive on each part. But the advantage of fitness for its own class, performance of its own class, is that's the one focus there. It takes more buy-in, I believe, on the client side. So the more dialed in a gym is, then I think you can pull that off. But I think you've got to really be able to communicate so much value to do that, and it be the gym culture. So I've seen both work really well there, and that just depends on, are you the gym that's going to say, no, you come at 5:30. You can't even come at 4. You come at this time, and you're like a closed system.
Yep.
Right? Like Apple, or is it more like Android, where it all can kind of move together and you can flow. And if you're here on this day, we know we're there. And so neither one's better. It's really always what's right for the athlete and what's right for then the coaches to be able to carry out the programming to the members. And that's really the second big thing that I felt like I've been trying to tackle this year, is that part of it.
Okay.
Is not having things get lost in translation.
So, okay. And there's a number of ways, to do that, because like we talked about before, is you've got to work through your coaching team.
Yes.
And then that's that common ground where you guys have this shared vision of how you're delivering the fitness.
Yes.
And, we've talked about these 2 models. A great question came through that I think we need to discuss is how much training, actual work time, can we fit into a 60-minute class?
Yeah.
And the reason that came up was, let's just kind of backstep a little bit, the structure of class, right? You mentioned having the warm up, and then, merging into instruction or exercise demonstration. Then you have, say, your part A, part B, and then a cool down and a stretch. Yep. But how, like, when you look at a program, do you cap how much work time can actually physically get done in a class?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I'm looking at it ultimately from the coach's perspective of how they deliver it to the members. Because, and this is where I say that I have my issues with the individual design approach delivered to gyms. And I've seen a lot of friends, they do individual design, and obviously we all talk, and I see what they send off to gyms, and I'm like, that's just individual design. That doesn't, like, that's not going to work. And it's because it has no soul. You ever see those bumper stickers that say drum machines got no soul? I think about that. There's no like meat to it. There's no shared, what's the shared common experience to get a little out there? But that is the power of the group. You guys go, we went through this, we did this, we accomplished this, we learned this. There's the value versus just doing it. And so that's my issue with the individual part. If I say part B, 5 sets, rest walk 5 minutes after each piece, it is hard because it takes so long, or it's hard to get your teeth around in the right way to do that. So then we have to balance the conditioning, the programming without overloading them. But this is where I think knowing the gym game well is a really unique advantage here for that part. So think about it as, I look at it as a sliding scale. Higher complexity, low time. So if we're snatching and doing Amanda, that's going to be it, right? Part A is probably just going to be snatching technique, not even for a heavy load, because Amanda's a super complex workout even for sport. That means for performance, we're probably doing it might be Elizabeth or a variant of Amanda, right? If we're going to do multiple benchmarks same day, then I would probably do Amanda for sport, performance is Elizabeth. Or if I just wanted training, it might be something to elicit really, muscle endurance CP battery, right? For most people, that's Amanda. They can do a couple muscle ups, shake it out, a couple muscle ups. They're not doing squat snatches unbroken and muscle ups unbroken the whole way, right? So we know that we have to, how do we elicit that same stimulus that makes it Amanda in the middle here or in the beginner? How do we do this? So that means they're probably only going to be 15 minutes of training time that day, because there's so much coaching instruction, where if we have, let's say, Filthy 50, Michael, Kelly, relatively low skill, good, we might get 35, 40 minutes of training in an hour. That's it. There's no part A. There's no, hey, let's also bench real quick. No, let's just do this today. Generally, if we work from the start backwards, the two biggest components I have to make sure we have time for are the coaching, explanation, enrollment, and setup, right? About 5 minutes each time should do that if we're being efficient with our warm-ups. That means the 5-minute part after the first training block, where we're enrolling them in what each group stimulus should be for this conditioning piece, and the 5 minutes of skill instruction and setup for the first part. If it's a lift, it's a technique, it's a gymnastic skill, that's the value of the class. And if we over-program, then they did a lot of training, but there's no value. And I really believe if coaching is the product, then them being able to give their coaching to your members is the value. And when we don't have that, they came and did a workout. They didn't learn. They didn't need you. And I want them to need you as a coach so badly that they never want to leave. Not that they're tied to you, but there's so much knowledge. They're like, I need more. Tell me, Chris, tell me more today. I'm going to come early tomorrow. Tell me more.
That's such a great point, because the value part is, the feedback that they're getting and the understanding and the growth, right?
Yes.
And if we just program for the entire hour, you're not going to have that awareness and that exercise selection growing. Yes. And one of the things that, if you're wondering why we're even talking about this, if you think back into your classes where you have a range of finish times, I don't know if any of you out there have, programmed a workout with no cap, right? And you've got your fire breathers and your performance athletes finishing, then you've got these newbies finishing 15 minutes later, and everyone else is kind of like sitting around or hanging out, or they got to jet out because they got work, right? Yeah. That's the worst feeling in the world as a coach. Yeah. And the newbie ends up feeling terrible, like everyone's waiting on them. Yeah. So from a structure standpoint, Tim, this is something you and I have talked about, and I really appreciate this about CJ from Invictus. He did something a while back. I don't know if I mentioned this to you, Tim, but he started putting in 4-time or AMRAP.
Yeah.
And it was a control.
Right.
And I really liked that format. And that goes back more to the gym quality or the value that you're bringing, where every workout needs to be designed with some kind of time frame to ensure the value, right?
Yes, exactly.
So what does that time look like? Is that like 30 to 40 minutes of actual workout time has to be, focused so you can get all the moving parts in?
Yeah, again, generally it's going to be about 30. Let's say complexity is moderate. Maybe we're doing power cleans, burpees, some pull-ups, like stuff that your performance people can get around, because our beginners aren't doing power cleans for conditioning, right? They haven't earned that complexity level yet. They're not going to be able to express the power needed to do that. Our sport people can get it. They're going to work on their part maybe a little deeper. So about, let's say, 30 minutes is going to be it. If we go deeper on the strength part, we know the other part is going to be shorter, and vice versa. If the first part's, more skill, we earn more time here. But that goes into, how do we make sure our coaches are communicating that to our members, right? And then when I was writing more, individual stuff for everyone doing that same approach, it was getting lost in translation for me. For them, and they're going to go, oh, okay, it's 5 rounds for time, I guess it's this, and it's everyone's interpretation. So I started making weekly, monthly, whole cycle, and then daily video lesson plans to really break down, this is supposed to be aerobic power muscle endurance as for this group. That means the desired stimulus is going to be aerobic power where they can keep moving. The limiter will be muscle endurance, not breathing for most people. So we want to make sure when we're at the whiteboard and breaking it down for them, that we're helping them enroll themselves in those choices versus us going, you have to do this, you can't do this, here's your rep range, whatever. We're helping them the whole class start to understand where they need to be as a piece of your whole program. Because this aerobic power muscle endurance is meant to fit with maybe tomorrow is high effort threshold repeats, where muscle endurance better not be a limiter, right? So now, by being able to explain that in these videos, here's how the whole cycle fits, here's why we need to hit this piece here, and here's today, that the coaches and the gym owners can spend more time communicating this with their coaches. Because again, why? Well, that's the value to the members. And what do the members need? The members need to get to be able to stay in their lane, but they don't know how. They're members, right?
Let's talk about that transition. So we mentioned the avatars, and this is a question I get often, is when you start recognizing these athletes developing, or you have these teenage type athletes who think they're more mature than they really are as an athlete. Where do you and how do you draw the line of knowing and communicating to your coaching team of when to pull someone up to the next program, or when someone's not ready and you got to say, hey, hang tight, stay in here a little bit longer? What does that really look like? Is that a hard line, and how do you communicate that to your coaches?
Yeah, this is a great question. I mean, most people here probably have had this issue with or hurdle with different members to help them. They want to progress. They want to keep moving up. But we also see them for where they're at with their long-term growth in mind. So with the goal-based avatars I use, they're not levels. So there's no hard and fast, you have to do this to get here, because we know that people are imbalanced. You have a football player, right away, and let's say the workout is power clean burpees, and it's someone who's been in your gym for a year, so they know the moves, but they're, it's a D1 linebacker, right? Could they probably do the sport part for that training? Probably. I bet they probably could. They could probably throw around some 225 power cleans, burpees over the bar, because they're good at going short, fast, and hard, right? So that's fine. Let's say the first part of that class is muscle up skill progressions. How great are most of our D1 linebackers at upper body pulling? Not awesome. So what do they need? They probably need to be doing performance or fitness to get the right training stimulus for that. So by taking away of RX, RX plus, beginner, I want to take away the value of what it means to do each thing of like, oh, I wasn't good enough for this. No, I'm doing this training because this is in alignment with my goals. My goals are to get here. My goals are to lose weight, right? I mean, how many of you have had a performance or sport person get injured? They're off for 6 months and they come back in and they're timid, right? They're timid because they can't do the sport or performance thing. But what do they need? They need to do some function stuff and get ready to be able to train again. But if they think I couldn't do the right thing, sometimes they talk themselves out of even coming back. And I've seen it happen multiple times. So that's why I don't think there's a hard and fast line for this. And that's where the coaching value comes in. And for me, this is supporting coaching, doing programming for gyms. I want to support that, give them time to do that. And then it looks to gym culture, right? The biggest thing I would say to help do this is the culture in my mind, the things we spotlight. If I have a sport athlete who crushes his workout, what do I praise to the class? His high time, his fast time? It's how coachable he is, where he started or where she started. And I go, this person has come in every day, and if I have to scale them on the bar or I have to put them at 115 instead of 135, they do it, and that's why they did so great. So they don't get praise for just the win, because then all people want to do is, I want to do advanced stuff too, but I'm trying to get them to enroll in the process of training, and that means being coachable. So that's why I say it's hard to do, because it gets into gym culture, and I can't control that. But I do want to show the pieces of here's how you really get to the top. Again, by staying in your system, by being coachable.
This is a really big issue, guys. For those of you that are noticing attrition being a problem in the gym, keeping people in long-term memberships. And the thing that I constantly go back to, and I was talking to a gym owner about this the other day, is it really has to do with goals. Like, where are they at within their goal? And then what is that programming striving to get them, in terms of a performance benefit? And if someone is lost, right, like they don't understand what type of athlete they are, let alone what the next milestone for them is, it's really hard for them to stay engaged. And I think that looking across all the trends and all the gyms that, we coach and interact with, this gets the most messy for people, is because they show up to class, they get involved in the programming, and they just get really good at showing up to class. But then something happens where they lose like this drive.
Yep.
And that's where I start seeing the need for what we're talking about here, is having someone recognize that, hey, I'm here in my fitness and I'm working towards this. And that looks like this type of programming or skills and abilities. And that's why I think it's important to have this mindset as a programmer for your gym, or have a system in place that is going to allow people to ascend up or progress up. Otherwise, they're going to feel like, they're plateauing.
Yep.
And they're going to go elsewhere. And, we've got to develop these programs so that there's longevity to them, right?
Yeah.
But that's the big overreaching issue that I see a lot. And it's not just about maximizing performance, but it's also making sure that they're a part of this journey that lasts and grows. Because at the end of the day, the worst thing you could have is have, someone come in and accomplish everything that he wanted to in 6 weeks, and they don't need you anymore.
Yeah, right. I mean, you do all that work, right? Our goal is to create clients for life, right? And always have another step for them. And I think that's where we want to try and have the programming. And, no one here, Chris, you've been in business even longer than me. First of all, that means you're getting older. Let's talk about it. But seriously, when was the last time someone called you and wanted to increase their work capacity across broad time and little domains? I was like, Chris, I got to. No, I don't feel comfortable in my skin. I don't feel like an athlete anymore. Might be performance, but I don't feel like I'm an athlete. I think I have more here, right?
Yeah, and this is a great question to bring up, because I think Josh just hit it on the head. Is like, his question was, does Juice have milestones? Yeah. And that's kind of what we're getting at, is like, what does that line look like for you to understand it, your coaches understand it, and then once your coaches understand that line, now your members can communicate effectively. Otherwise, they're just going to blame or shift the responsibility. So that's why I think it's so important to have some clarity on this. So what do you say when it comes to milestones? Like, how do you coach your athletes to understand that this is a progressional style of training, but then also that coach-athlete dialogue of knowing when to hold someone in place, when to push someone that's kind of ready to grow?
Yeah. That's the interpersonal coaching parts that we have to be able to spend most of our time and energy here, right? The ROI you get from trying to go in to communicate with your clients on the floor, to really help understand what they're going through, that if they're struggling with push-ups and they're frustrated, most people probably aren't frustrated with the push-up itself, right? They're frustrated with what the push-up will get them, and they can't get that, and now they're not going to get their end goal. So yeah, we have performance milestones, but for me, that's secondary to their main goal. And what is their main goal? Right, their main goal is, right, if they're coming in, we know what most challengers' main goal is. We know if they are performance, they want to be able to do these moves well, and they want to, look really good, and they want to be able to do all these different tasks. And so we have that for every group. So while there's stuff we could say, get to, 5-minute AMRAP with unbroken push-ups for an intermediate, we want them to have 20 unbroken plus, 50 plus in the remaining time, let's say. Okay, cool. That's not why they're there. And if we over-focus on that and not helping them do it better, helping them be in less pain, making sure they know how to recover to come back and train stronger, I think we're trying to divert some attention with what the really powerful stuff is, right?
Yeah, and the reason I'm going to pause on this question one more time, I'm going to circle back around, is that may be the case for 6 weeks of someone coming in with, I want to feel better, I want to look better in the mirror, I want to lose 20 pounds. But then as that athlete experience grows, do you find that athletes mature in a way where they do want to measure benchmarks? And, because that's what I'm seeing in the gym. Like maybe that milestone is actually going from 6 weeks to 6 months and then a year, just like how people train for the Olympics. I know that, that's a 4-year training program, and should we be equipped to extend the training programs because we want to serve them better and start looking at these definitive places where an athlete mindset no longer necessarily has to deal with body composition or, some of the basic, I need to get a routine. Like when they pass those milestones, something else opens up, and it's the chase, right? I want to be faster, stronger, fitter.
They've internalized the process.
Yes.
Right? It's like my advanced athletes that are on individual design, I can give them the same thing, and not that I do, obviously there's changes to it, but I could give them the same thing for months on end on a Monday. If like your squat is low, we're going to be doing some sort of absolute strength on a Monday for ages. And it's like, is this fun? Like, no, shut up. You want to be in the Olympics? We have to remediate this thing. I'm not telling you this is fun at all. I'm telling you we have to do this stuff to get to this goal. But they are so bought in here from years and years of training to where they can do that. So to get the buy-in there, obviously in the beginning, that's why that 6-week challenge enrollment machine is so powerful, because it's very concrete. Here to here, done. What's over here? Don't look over there. Right here, just get to here and crush it. They have some basic skills. Now they want to play along. Like anyone here plays music. At first you learn basic notes on the guitar. Now I want to learn some songs. They're not my own songs, but I want to learn to play them. And that's kind of like learning the benchmarks. Right? So that's why the intermediate people, they're focused around that. They want to be able to play the game. So their training revolves around more movement variants, learning to play the game. They're competitive. They did Fran RX finally. They always wanted it because all the ripped people did it and the badasses did it. So they want to play that game. Good. Right? Now you've been around the block, you've done those. Now you want to open up the wider world of sport where it's, more complexity out there. You may want to go, throw down with your friends, compete some, etc. So there is kind of a natural arc to that, but we want that to be really guided by the coach and to help make sure that now the client's not leading this one where they don't need you anymore. And not that we're handicapping them. I say need in the sense of they need you to be there for them as their coach to keep unlocking doors.
Okay,
right?
So let's talk about this in the context of training your team. Okay, so we mapped out avatars. We understand who's in the gym, and we're trying to serve them better through that class format. We're protecting them through progressions. We're putting caps on time to control value. Now, when it comes to planning and strategizing, I look at this formula that we do, and this is a juice format as well, is test, train, retest.
Yep.
Right?
Totally.
And for those of you guys out there who are doing programming and haven't latched on this concept, it's really impactful, right? When newbies coming in understand that they're progressing quickly. So the test, train, retest may happen shorter. And then, as people grow and experience better results, it gets harder and harder to hit those PR times. So it may look like test, train 9, 12 weeks, and then retest.
Yep.
But that type of programming format is recognized for, both the beginners, the intermediates, and the advanced. It's just how long the training is in relation to the testing.
Yes.
All right. So say we have that format,
yep.
Test, train, retest. We talked about the class format. What types of conversations are actually happening inside team meetings? I'm a big supporter of having weekly team meetings. That's every single coach in the meeting. What do you like to see happening? Because at the end of the day, we have to teach the lesson plan. The lesson plan is the workout and ultimately follow the program.
Yeah, for sure. So this was one of the, like I said, probably the biggest area I'm trying to solve for the gyms I work with right now, because team meetings every week is difficult. Your guys are so dialed in at Live, you can do that. A lot of people can't get all the pieces on board, or then the time to look at the programming, digest it, make sense of it, etc. So I've been making weekly video programming overviews that would be essentially what would be done in a team meeting, or to help leverage the gym owner go, hey, cool, let's all watch this and talk about it together. Or everyone watch this, we're going to talk about it at our meeting if they do have a weekly meeting. I do a monthly video programming overview also. So if they're meeting at least monthly, which I hope you're meeting at least monthly, like this, we can go over it and you have all the pieces there to do it, in addition to daily parts. So it's meant to just leverage the time, not to replace what the gym owner does. Like, no one's going to replace you as the leader in the gym. And if they do, then you should really take, I think, a hard look at the gym itself. That's your job, right? That's the one we signed up for, and we got to do it, right? So that should be there to go over, okay, here's what's on the agenda. How do we deliver this as best as possible? Are there changes we need to make or tweaks to our people? And I'll give you an example. So you talked about test, retest. So right now we're running 12-week cycles with 3-week mini blocks, which work really well from a scientific standpoint. So we have accumulation phase, general prep or transitional 1, transitional 2, intensification. Inside those 3 weeks, we really have an accumulation week, right? A volume building week, right, which would be like a transitional week, building volume from the previous week or complexity, and then an intensification week, which is a natural deload and increase in intensity, a drop in volume. So it works well from a long part, but what it does is it helps give us little mini tests along the way so our beginners can constantly see progress. The tests for, say, performance are probably more like, the 3 weeks might be like, okay, just build it to an 8-rep max, not a 1 rep every 3 weeks, but something sub of the piece we're going to do. But let's say now every 6 weeks, they're hitting a little harder test. Because for performance, that's probably about the time they need to progress a little more. Maybe 3 if they're newer on performance, maybe a little longer there. And then our sport people, those ones are just kind of more deviations in intensity and volume. Because like you mentioned, it takes them longer to progress. So their real big tests are every 12 weeks. So that's how using that format helps keep variance, right? We can change the days up of the weeks, the days up of our priorities every 3 weeks. So they get enough progression to do well. But then it's not, like I said, for my individual people, no, you're squatting on Monday, I don't care. No, I don't care about your feelings. No, like, don't talk to me about this again. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's the approach if someone's going to the Olympics. This hurt. Good. It's going to hurt more next Monday. Sorry. With our members, we know their rate of progression is different.
Love it. So for those of you guys out there who are not meeting, long story short, schedule it, book it, make it mandatory. Like Tim said, if you're not doing this, start with once a month. I believe that you should pay your coaches to be there if that's actually an issue of being
there. In most states, that's all probably the law.
Yeah.
Right.
And, make it a part of the development of the team as well as improving your service and value. And I promise you, your coaches will value their time more and what you guys do on a regular basis more. And that's going to have, impact elsewhere. If they're doing sales, they're going to appreciate the time and energy and effort you go to and the length you go to make sure that you get the details right. So, Tim, I wanted to talk a little bit about the details inside the meetings.
Yeah.
So if we're looking at it from an experience, you talked about being in the game 10 years.
Yep.
And, the level in which we look at Olympic lifts, it's almost like if you look at a really experienced athlete, everything's kind of in slow motion. But to the newbie coach, it's like, wait, what? Can you do it again? I missed the whole
magic,
right? And I think that's what I start to see is as we develop and we spend so much time looking at videos, watching athletes, this is why those coaching hours are a requirement for getting, say, level 1, level 2, and so on, is they want to make sure you have enough reps and you can visibly see all the coaching cues. And I think the same goes inside our teams. As you've got various levels of coaches, you should be taking your experience and dripping that down to the team so you elevate everyone. So some of the things topic-wise that we look at are movement progressions, right? Yeah. So if the movement is written in the programming, you better hope that you have a way to either add more intensity for that athlete that needs more challenge or come down to a modification. But I want every coach on my team to recognize for that day in that class, they know if they see someone move, they've got options. Right?
100%. And that's where I look at the goal-based programming tiers as jumping off points for a negotiation, right? Like you said, if someone needs this and it's front squat, 8 to 10 reps, 3-1-X1 tempo, in those coaches meetings and in my daily video lesson plans, I'm going over, hey, here are options. What are good options? They need to know this. So that way they go, oh, this person really needed 6 with, I see how they're cantilevering up on the front part on the way out. Cool. What are our options? Drop the load, increase the tempo slowly on the way up so they feel that. Get them a box. So we're going over this so they can help remediate that. Not that you're like, well, Tim said, sorry, like, I wish I could do something about it, but man, like, you're ultimately responsible for this. And one thing I always say is that I expect the programming to be about 90 to 95% done for a gym. That there should be 5% or so just from the coach's meeting standpoint of going, you know what, sandbags would be more fun here. Oh, this would be great. If actually it's beautiful, we should do this with running instead of rowing. This would be wonderful. And that makes it better. That makes it better, not worse, when you take the idea, because we're given the science and the format and the structure, all the heavy lifting, and you go, our gym is special like this.
Sometimes I laugh when I in appreciation for Tim's level of knowledge, because you use a lot of acronyms, and it just kind of dawned on me. I'm like, that's the level in which you think and operate as a programmer. And I was thinking about in a class setting, and this is kind of funny for those of you guys that deal with this, is like if you program a clean and then all of a sudden your coaches have the class do like a power clean, right? Like that little terminology was completely changes the workout, right? If you did legs before and squatted, and then all of a sudden you wanted power clean, but you wrote clean, you just now destroyed this person's legs. Yeah. It was just a simple communication error, right? So that's why I think having these team meetings having a common language for your list of exercises, right? And then actually talking about the intensity levels and the feeling of the workout in which it should be, right? Like if someone's too heavy, they lose the stimulus.
Yes.
And the intensity. And the workout's completely different from them. They walk around like, oh, that's not enough. It wasn't enough for me. And you're like, are you crazy?
Right. And they wonder why they can never go lactic, right? Because they turn it into CP battery. Right. Do this. 1 dump. 1 dump. No, man, it's this. Go touch. That's the beat you need there. And these are the things that if we're not communicating that to the coaches, and then there's not the space in the programming for them to go, guys, I need it to be like this. Everyone show me 5 reps at the pace you're going to go for these power cleans to start the class, and they get through 3 already, and they're like, dropping. You're like, no, that's CP battery. That's not lactic endurance, dog. Sorry, drop it down. But now we have a reason back to the idea of hard and fast levels of how I can help people get to the right stimulus, because the load is just the thing we need to get to the stimulus.
Right.
But this load is a guess. Hey, it's 135. Well, why not do 200? I can do it. Now you have someone finishing 15 minutes later.
I look at it from a standpoint of your coaches meetings are scaling your education and knowledge into the floor, the classroom setting. If many of us on the ownership side are anywhere from, some of us don't even coach class anymore, all the way up to, having 20 hours, but that's not your entire class schedule. So you've got to disperse that knowledge. And, if you're like a musician, it's like someone playing the wrong song. And you've got to think of it that way in terms of, if I'm going to get this workout clear and concise and run this program with, specific goals, you've got to tighten this area up. So let's kind of transition a little bit. I wanted to talk about it, as we're flowing through athlete kind of mentality, coach mentality. Let's talk about it in terms of the gym.
Yep.
Okay. So I want to talk about flow, okay?
Yep.
Programming flow. And what I mean by that, there is a formula in which I've learned over the years to do this in-house.
Yeah.
And Tim, you're basically doing this and removing this time and this bandwidth for gyms by, taking them on as a programming client. Yep. But either way, this is typically the flow that happens. And, correct me or add to this, Tim, if you don't like this. What I see is you start out with your training goals, okay? And then you write your programming.
Sure.
And you end up writing that. And then it goes through to a review process. And you mentioned this, your 6 components. You're actually looking for right intensity levels or overuse, antagonist. All of these things have to get reviewed, because as a programmer, you're kind of blind too if you don't have a review process, which is why you want that programming done in advance.
Yes.
So that you can see these areas of improvement.
Yep.
And the last piece, this is what doesn't get talked about often enough, is you actually have to take that beautiful programming that you have written and reviewed, and then you have to input it into a software so you can communicate that to your athletes. Yeah. And then lastly, what do you got to do? You got to promote it, right? You got to get people excited about it. And all I see is time. And I love and enjoy that process. And that's probably why you and I geek out about it so much, Tim. But that's lengthy. That's time. So let's talk about the time component, because this is important. Put in the chat, how much time per week do you guys spend programming? And Tim, same thing. What do you think the average time?
Average, I'd say, is 3 to 5 hours is what I hear the most. I've had some that, obviously are, under an hour, and you see it and you go, yeah, it's about right. I'm surprised you put in that much. And I've had some people tell me in all brainstorming, et cetera, research they do, and that includes, times you're, at the computer looking at stuff, not just hitting the keys. I've heard up to 20 hours, which I think is outrageous. But Jason says 3 to 5. I think that's probably about industry standard. I'd say under an hour. Now, I get to work with Joshua, so and that hopefully saves you, 5 hours. That's 20 hours a month you're doing. So my biggest thing is if you spent 20 hours a month, right? We know that writing the program is different than delivering the program. And I've recognized that from my own practice of seeing it done when I drop into gyms that I program for, and I see it told before I was doing, say, like the daily video lesson plans, where a coach can just pull up my video on their phone 5 minutes, or hold out 5 minutes before class, maybe 30 minutes before class, and go over the flow of it again and go, okay, got it, right? When they're not doing that, you spent 20 hours for it not to be said like you wanted, right? But if we spent, let's say, 10 hours a month now on coaching development, not just coaches meetings, but we're, taking our coaches one-on-one because we have time to do it. We're working with them on the areas they need, voice projection, proper spacing in the floor, how to get people to interact more together, right? If the first part's power cleans, do you have everyone just lift and drop the bar all at one, or do you have 3 people go, 10 seconds later, 3 people go, so you can actually watch each group, right? There's ways we can train our coaches to leverage the large group. And do we spend 10 more hours on back-end sales and client service? Put it up in the chat now, Josh and Jason, whoever else is engaging here. What's the ROI for you if you had 10 more hours a month to do challenge spots or to do enrollment spaces for your gym? What's the ROI potentially? And this is where really the rubber meets the road for me. Yeah, $5,000. That's right. Right. If you had 10 more spots, 2 more hours you did, that you had mental clarity, you're not fried, you're not whatever, that we go, okay, I could do that.
Right? It takes a certain personality, I think, to fall in love with programming and the process that it takes. And you can throw any workout up on the board and it, yes, is a workout. But if we're talking about getting our members to their results or the things that matter most to them as quick as possible in terms of an ROI, this starts to play a role. And then if we're talking about keeping people healthy and feeling, not beat down every single week, and we want them to stay for year 2, 3, 4, 5, this is when it really starts to matter. I think you can get away with early on making it feel like all the science is there in the beginning. But as you guys know, who have been in the business a long time, you build a reputation for the quality of the care you take and the personalization that, your members feel. So I think this is a big value add. Question is, do you want to invest the time or do you want to outsource it? So we're going to wrap this up shortly, but I want to get to 2 big questions and then call on anybody that had anything else out there. 2-part question, Tim. What are the common mistakes that you think gym owners are making with programming? And what are some quick fixes or hacks that you can recommend?
I think common mistake number 1 is programming for the best and scaling for the rest, right? I just have seen that not work. Look, you take anyone off the couch, something will work. They're walking, it's working. But now don't try and come at me and tell me that walking is the best fitness program in the world, right? Like there are differences. Yeah, so we will get there. I'm interested, if we look at it like stocks, what are you getting above the standard rate of return? Let's say rate of return is 4. Cool. So you're like, good, we're getting 4%. And you're like, good. You can get 7% if you know what you're doing though. So great. Don't you want 7% or you got to, stick with this? So that approach where we just write the thing and then chunk it down, I don't think it works because, as we said, there's different things each group needs relative to their goal, relative to their rate of progression to help that. So to say you're going to do snatches, heavy singles for sport, we're doing 7 singles today, performance is going to do 7 power snatch single, and fitness is going to do 3 hang power snatch single. I think there's some things that we probably want to look at a little deeper to help them, express that the power technique they need to do that right relative to where that is in their training cycle. So that part for one, I think there's better ways we can do that with keeping true to challenging advanced people and not, dumbing them down. That would probably be one. The second thing with programming, communication. We write it in our head. How well can you get your coaches to deliver your programming? That's huge. And they don't. They write it, they explain it, that it's the on-the-floor decisions that no coach wants to be micromanaged. They want to be excited about the programming. Can they go out there and have enough knowledge for what this workout is? They don't need all the knowledge. They just need to be able to, like you said, what are the movement profile choices for this one workout? Right? We can load the deck for them. Can we help them do that? I feel like I don't see that happening as much as I would like to. Yeah.
Good. And then any simple hacks or tips that you can offer up to maybe save someone time that says, hey, I love programming. I want to do it. I share it with my coaching team or have someone on staff do it. Like, how do we help these guys become better programmers using your experience and knowledge? What is something that maybe you learned early on and just had that aha moment that maybe has stuck with you?
Yeah, this is a huge question here, and one that kind of always changes a little as we learn more in this process, which is great. The biggest ones are helping give them parameters of where you want them to go. And I'll break down what I mean by parameters in a second, but when we talk about fitness, why CrossFit is the hardest sport to program for. And I work with athletes in all different sports, hockey, combatives, taekwondo, UFC, track, all over. So simple compared to fitness. Fitness is because it's like, you're like, oh, is there going to be a sled in this workout? We don't know. Crap, do we do sled? Oh, is it rolling? No, it's a new thing. We got to get an air runner, and it's all crazy, right? Like there's such a broad thing. That's why it's so fun. So by helping get them the parameters what you want relative to the testing we want at the end. So obviously we have a test. What is the purpose of the test? Can you communicate that to them? Let's say it's after the open cycle, right? We went from after the open, which usually is an intensification phase for most people. We're hitting it hard. One workout a week, we're trying to kill it. So that means after the open, we have a 3-month block. If we're going to break the year down into 4 kind of 12-week cycles with a little deload after, that first cycle should now focus on what? And that's your job to explain that to them. I would say probably absolute strength, aerobic progressions, basic gymnastics, and all these skills that we're going to use to unlock speed, strength, and strength, speed, power, and battery power later in the year, right, to do that. But I have to give them those parameters. And then we go, okay, we're doing aerobic and a lot of muscle endurance. Works well because MRF's coming up. So cool, we're going to do this, which is a good basic support for the next month. But if we don't give them those, now their programming might say, hey, the workout is Amanda right now. Let's say that's the workout. Okay, is that the best workout to do in early April if everyone has open fatigue? Right? That's the job as the owner to set the parameters for them so they can make good choices inside what you want, because the owner has to always paint the vision. The coaches are the product. Your coaches are your product. And then the on-the-floor athlete's the one that is needing the service. So that's kind of how I think of this. If you can paint the parameters around there, it's easy. Why are multiple choice tests easier than fill in the blank? Here's your choices. Choose one. Right? I need 1 day absolute strength. I need 1 day of gymnastic skill. Okay, good. But if they're like everything, hey, coach, we got 3 lactic powers, a hero wad, and you're like, not what I wanted.
That's how it goes. All right, those are great principles. I think in closing, what I can add to that is that I think the details are often what are overlooked the most. So all of these simple things that you're like, you think you do regularly, you have to revisit with your coaching team. And whether that is having a common language, whether that is understanding what their go-to cues are. Think back to level 2. If you guys haven't been to level 2 yet, it's so incredibly good. Like, and one of the best things they do is they put you in a group of people in a circle, and they basically put you on the spot to cue and critique. And you learn certain coaches have tendencies or go-tos where they only have movement cues. Maybe they got, like, if that one cue doesn't work, they've shot all their bullets. They don't even they don't have another go-to, right?
Heels, so, right?
Yeah, heels.
Right? Yeah. Heels.
So butt back.
Yeah, you're dead right though. And they try and use that to solve every problem.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that would be my piece is latch on to the detail side inside your coaches meetings. If you don't have them, step 1, get a coaches meetings, and it will evolve from there. Because if you can be like aggressive with wanting the best and fastest results for your people and be in the safest and treat this as a longevity type approach, the curriculum will come.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. So in closing here, guys, I want to thank you for being on the call. No doubt, I think we'll have Tim back on, and we'll be able to dive into maybe a special topic. But today was really about just getting you to understand the layers and have a great conversation across athlete awareness and creating avatars, looking at it from a coach's perspective on results and quality of delivery, and then from a gym perspective of how to actually do this in a way that is in the best interest of running the business. So in closing here, if you guys want help with programming and want to connect with Tim, do you have a link or anything that you want to direct people to learn more about Juice?
Well, I have a scheduling link there that just happened to pop up real quick. So you can just schedule a call. It'll be, obviously we've gone over this stuff. You're here, so we can do that. The other one, if you just wanted to check out the site, compound.com/. If you want to see more, there's videos there of what the video lesson plans look like, what the video overviews look like on a weekly, monthly, and cycle basis on what some of the value and service you'd be getting. But if you've seen all this, you know everything that's on the site now and more, right? There's not over an hour of content on the site. It'd be all the questions that Chris grilled me on. Definitely crush that. I'd love to schedule a call and see what your gym needs and how we could help start and freeing up more of your time to focus on coaching, focus on enrollment, focus on client service, the things that really do impact your gym and that you can't outsource, right? Me and Chris can't call your clients for you, right? If someone doesn't show up, they don't want to hear from me, they want to hear from you. But this I can help you do and help your gym get scale and get your time back. And no one's angry and everyone's happy.
Cool. Well, Tim, I want to thank you for being on the call, for all you guys out there that joined us.
Yeah.
Anything else? Last closing words, Tim?
Man, my pleasure. Chris, thank you for the time. Thank everyone at Thackrey Forge for putting this together, and excited to get to talk to you guys more in the future. If you have questions or comments offline, I know I got some side messages already. Just shoot me a message on Facebook or at tim@juicecompound.com, and I'll try and answer them one-off for you also.
Perfect. Have a great day, guys, and we will post up the recording if you didn't catch all of it as well. So,
right on, guys.
See you guys. Thanks, Tim.
Thanks, guys. Take care.